I remember growing up in sunny Southern California, but often talking about the gloomy days or the days where the weather wasn't so great. And I'd say things to my mom like, Mom, I want to move to Seattle. Now, I'm glad that I didn't move to Seattle, and maybe that would be too much gloom, but I would say that because I really actually appreciated the sunshine more. But I would talk regularly about the tougher days and the weather days because it made me appreciate the sunshine more. Like if you have all sunshine and you don't have any rain, then you're not going to appreciate the sunshine. And this is a cliche that we talk about, but today I wanted to talk about more of the tougher parts of life and having people fall in love more with the tougher parts of life versus only seeking the top of the mountain but avoiding the valleys, because we're going to be in the valleys more than we're going to be in the peaks. And if we learn how to digest and we learn how to appreciate the valleys, not wanting to be there but wanting to appreciate being there at that time, so that when we get to the top of the mountain we feel so much better. Think about superficial things that we take for granted but that we love. Maybe it's a clean house. I love a clean place. I love when I smell the cleaning supplies. I love when you could tell that there's no fingerprints. I love when you could tell that people took took care. But the process of cleaning, man, that's you got to really fall in love with cleaning if you want to have a clean house. Now, if you avoid it and say, I can't stand this, I hate cleaning, then if you don't fall in love with that tougher part, you're rarely going to have a clean house. Or maybe it's a great meal, and I don't cook and I don't prepare foods, but I could imagine somebody, the amount of time and energy that they put into it. Just like I have a Mexican wife, and if you have tamales, these individuals put so much work and time into preparing tamales, but then you go to eat them and it's amazing. But the process of preparing and doing all the food stuff, that's a lot tougher. Like seeing a bed that's clean, like a bed that's made perfectly, or shoes that are shined. Those are very nice things, but you really got to fall in love with putting the bed together. And if you're upset with making the bed, you're going to spend more time having to make the bed than enjoy the bed. And so I wanted to highlight a couple examples from movies, a couple examples from sports, where we like to see the victory, but we have to fall in love with the harder part. And I'll start with love. Love is a tough one. So this happens a lot with my wife and I. I love love songs. Okay, I love love songs. And Righteous Brothers Unchained Melody, I think, is the best song of all time. And I can give you a lot of different love songs. And I actually really love the love song. But if you're married, or you're in love, you understand that that honeymoon stage, it kind of lies to you for a little while, because there's the beginning stage of a relationship and everybody likes the honeymoon stage. You want to be around somebody who recently fell in love with somebody else, because there's a spirit about them and there's this excitement, and it's like a puppy dog, and it's like childlike and it's really exciting. But if you want to have a long-term marriage, that process has to be replicated over and over and over again, and you seek to get to that honeymoon stage, but you're not really in the honeymoon stage. Really, what you have to fall in love with is the tougher parts of the relationship, not because you want to be in a tougher part of the relationship, but because you want to bounce out of it, you want to come out of it, and you want to go through it. And so I tend to like songs where somebody's expressing their pain, they're expressing their frustration, they're expressing their hurt, and they came off of something tough. And sometimes my wife would say things to me like, man, you always love the songs where it seems like they're hurting. Why don't you like the songs where they're loving? And I say, no, babe, I love the love part. That's the part that I love. But to see people go through the pain, just like going through the gloomy day to get to the sunshine, or going through the working out, and everybody looks at somebody that has an attractive figure and they say, man, I want to look like that person, or I want to have that. But if you've ever been in a cold garage, or you've woken up in the morning and it's cold outside and you have to work out, or you're running, no matter how much I've tried running, that's one thing that I just can't fall in love with, is the running part, and so I have to find other ways to work out. But you want to be in shape, but you have to fall in love with that grind part. And there's a lot of content and a lot of videos about this, but I just wanted to share some of my favorite stories with you. I think about parenting. You see these pictures of families that have these beautiful children, or these holiday photos. Like, look at my Christmas picture. Do you know what parents had to go through to get to that Christmas picture? Do you know how many crying and griping and annoying things? And maybe your kids are perfect, but these children, man, it's like I look at my kids and I've got on my phone. You know you're a sucker if you've got your little girls on your phone or your kids on your phone, and I'm a sucker for my kids, and I look at these smiles and I go, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." That day at the park, you know what I had to go through to get to that picture? It was frustrating. You know how many times my kids have annoyed me or frustrated me to get to that spot, but we want to go through this. And so I could choose to say I'm very annoyed with the kids when they're acting this way, but I really like them when they're well behaved. And that might be true. Or I could shift my mindset and take control of my mind, okay? And say, listen, I love this process that I'm going to go through with these kids, because even though they're annoying me and they're testing me and they're frustrating me, and I don't know, I want to make sure that I don't respond negatively, because I know that when I get to this place, I can appreciate it. When we sit and we watch Home Alone and we lay down and we're laughing and enjoying ourselves, getting to that space is a lot harder than actually being in that space. I think about sleeping in. Growing up, if you ever wanted to sleeping in was always the most enjoyable when you knew you had to get up, but something gave you a pass. Like you faked it like you were sick, or, you got out of your commitment, or the appointment rescheduled, or maybe for some reason school canceled or something like that. I remember being younger and saying, man, I'm so tired. I want to sleep in. But on the days I was off and I had the ability to sleep in, it never felt as good to sleep in, because I sleeping in is, it's when you can't have it, it's when you don't want it, that you really appreciate these things. And so I'm going to give you a couple sports analogies for you. I think about Kobe Bryant, and Kobe comes into the league and he goes to the playoffs against the Jazz and he airballs the ball 4 times in a game. You don't even see NBA player airball it once, let alone twice, let alone 3 times, let alone 4 times in a row. And you see the players and you see Shaquille O'Neal look at him like, oh my gosh, this rookie, this guy. Now we all know what Kobe became. But when Kobe said he went back to the gym and he shot the ball again and again and again, and I mean, the way he describes it, when you watch his documentary Muse and you see the way he describes shooting the ball, he says, I shot the ball again and again and again and again. Now, when we're sitting there and we're watching Rocky run the steps and he goes up the steps and the song is on and it's like, man, I want to be a boxer. I want to run. I want to do this. It always makes it look more exciting. But then when you get there, holy moly, running upstairs, I don't know how long you last before you're like, nope, I'm not interested in this anymore. But when you're running the stairs like Rocky, or you're shooting the ball like Kobe, and we watch on TV these victory moments of confetti flying down, or your hands are stretched high, or Rocky gets to the top of the stairs, we get goosebumps. We get excited. If you're like me, you do. And but falling in love with that grind and that process is really how you get there. I think about LeBron James. And look, listen, my GOAT is Michael Jordan. Nobody's better than Michael Jordan, so I'm just putting that out there for you. But I appreciate Kobe. I appreciate LeBron James, and these are the next best players. But LeBron, what he went through, okay, and how much he was chastised, okay, how much he was chastised. First of all, he was anointed the chosen one by Sports Illustrated, and he actually delivered. They put him up on a pedestal, and he actually did it. Kudos to LeBron for what he did. And even though Michael's my GOAT, I have nothing but love. LeBron's the second best player of all time. And oh my gosh, what a great story. But how much he was chastised for the decision to go to Miami, how much he was chastised for what he went through and leaving and being self-centered and being childish, and all of the things that was done to him, said to him, maybe some of it deservingly so, but it was always a little bit too extreme. Remember, sports fan stands for fanatic. And when you're a fanatic, you really show it out. And you see this in sports, and the amount of ridicule and chastising of LeBron James that he got. But when he went back to Cleveland, and I'm one that will regularly say, and even though you can't, in an intelligent sports debate, you can't really pass this off, but I'm going to say it. That 2016 championship should count for two. Oh my gosh, to go up against that 2016 championship should count for two, because he went back to Cleveland, who hated him for leaving. And he brought a championship, first time to the city in 50 years. And when you see him get emotional that time, that's better than all the other championships. And you see it in his face. You see it when you see Michael Jordan win a championship on Father's Day. And the emotions were there for all of them, but the way the emotions were there when his father passed away, and you win the championship on Father's Day and you don't have your father there anymore, it's just a beautiful thing. When you watch the David Beckham documentary too, is a very good story about David Beckham. And when I see him hit some of these goals, He's one of the best soccer players of all time, and I have Ronaldo as my best. And I know Messi. I get it. I don't even want to hear it right now. But when I see Beckham, what he went through after this country of England hated him, I believe that no country loves their soccer more than England loves their soccer. And I'm not from England. I'm from America, but I could see it in their faces. I could see it. These guys are cultish to the next level about their soccer. And when they turned their back on him, and they hated him for getting a red card. I believe it was 98 World Cup or something. And when they turned their back on him and how he had to come back and win that fan base over, and the things they said about his wife, the things they said about him, hanging him from a noose, spitting on him in public, banging on the kids, threatening his kids, all banging on the doors when his kids are in the car, all these different things that they did to him. And to see him lock up and to go hit those goals over and over and over again and put that to sleep. I could watch that on repeat, and what it does to my insides, it just makes me feel like I fall in love with it. But it's the goals is what I want to do, the winning is what I want to do. But how do you get there? How do you end up feeling that? Is you got to fall in love with that process that sucks, that process that's so difficult. And it just affects you at all levels. It affects you spiritually, man. It affects you spiritually. Like you could question your belief system when going through some of this adversity. It affects your mind, and oh my gosh, it rattles your mind like you couldn't believe. It rattles your mind the way a hard-hitting football play would rattle a body. It rattles your mind, your emotional tolerance, your emotional well-being. I understand why some people go to depression, or some people go to like feeling really ugly inside, or they have to just like take it out on their craft, or something. Maybe they go into creative mode, or maybe they go into high workout mode, or they get this level of intensity that Tim Grover talks about in the book Relentless. And it's so difficult. But when Beckham went through this stuff, oh my gosh, I loved it. I love these stories. When I think about wrapping up Kobe's example and how Shaquille O'Neal leaves and he looks like a superstar winning 3 championships, and then he drives Shaquille O'Neal out. He has this marital situation that happens in his life. People are calling him all kinds of names, and he creates and turns on Mamba mentality. He literally created an alter ego, and it became how he's known, the Mamba, Black Mamba. And you just referenced Black Mamba like it's a cool character, but in reality, to get there, how he had to get there, what he went through to get there. I don't know how many people would want to go through that experience. We all want to have this Black Mamba, or we want to have this alter ego, or we want to win a championship. But 7 years, I believe, 7 years from '02 to '09 or '03 to 2010, whatever it was, where people are saying you needed Shaq and you needed this and you needed that. And he had to put that to bed. And he went to the '08 Redeem Team campaign, and he first won on the Olympic level, and he really won his peers over there, and then that translated into victory. And it's a beautiful story is what it is. The tough parts are the most beautiful stories you could ever imagine. I'm going to give you a couple musicians. You think about Elvis Presley, and I highly recommend the movie Elvis if you don't know his story. But Elvis, I think they had the greatest watched event of all time, over 1 billion people watching, that nobody's even replicated ever since. This is all before technology, but Elvis was on drugs, and Elvis had this rare ability to combine cultures and bring cultures together, and people just fainted at the sight of seeing him. But the pain that he had to go through, and the anguish that he had to go through physically, mentally, emotionally, to get to that space to become famous. Or the Michael Jacksons of the world. I grew up watching Thriller and the Moonwalk and Beat It, and I would put that VHS in and watch this over and over and over and over again. But the abuse that Michael took as a child, the fact that he never even had a childhood, the fact that his dad abused him, the fact that he was just a phenom at 5 years old, and we all like to watch Michael Jackson, sing, but what he went through in order to become great. And it was just really ugly and really sad. And it really, really hurts you on the inside. But you think about the Oprah Winfrey's of the world, and how she became this, oh, she's a billionaire or talk show, or she has all this clout and everything, but you don't know how she was treated as a child, and how she was abused, and how she was hurt. And I love the winning story, and I love the story of redemption, but it's the pain that you have to fall in love with, and the pain that you see. And I saw a lot of abuse in my household, and I grew up around a lot of people that were bullied or marginalized or hurt or had, drug addict parents or different things like that. And you never want to talk about the examples or the stories of living in a shelter or, being around battered women or being around people that were drunk or high or anything, and the verbal abuse and the physical abuse and everything. But I want you to know something. There's something beautiful about the pain. There's something beautiful about it. And although I wish it on nobody, I do understand the process of what happens. I think about some of my favorite movies, The Count of Monte Cristo, and how he had everything taken from him and he did nothing to anybody. And I believe he spent 7 years or 10 years in the prison, and he was never supposed to get out. And he comes out and his best friend takes his girl, and they take his wealth and they take everything from him and his position in society, and how he overcomes that, but he never hurts anybody in the process, but he gets his revenge. And I'm not a believer, I don't believe in the revenge aspect, but I believe in stories becoming full circle and the pain of what it's like to be in prison. I do not want to be in prison for this long. Or the story of Joseph in the Bible is one of my favorite in Genesis, and how his brothers exile him, and he goes to prison for 7 years, and so many different things happen to him, and you have to study the story to really get it. And how he comes back and he ends up the number two ruler of Egypt, and he ends up overseeing everything, and he makes things right with his brothers and he forgives them. But the pain that he had to feel being having his own brothers turn his back on him is how he became who he became. So you can't have Joseph and the great story of the ruler of Egypt if you don't have the story of your brothers turning their back and causing you this pain. And I think about other movies like Cinderella Man, and oh my gosh, I believe the best boxing movie of all time. Rocky is the best story or the best sequence with multiple movies. And you could say Rocky is the number one boxing movie of all time. Easily, I could hear that argument. It's fine. But there's something about Cinderella Man, the fact that it was in the Great Depression, and the father would act like he had all had a dream the night before, so that his children wouldn't feel bad about him giving the little bit of food that they had to them. And he would go on empty stomachs and he would fight for his dreams and fight for his goals. I never want to lose everything. I never want to go hungry, and I definitely don't want to have to box to pay my bills. But the process of what he did and the true story of what he did, it's not a fictitious story. Watch the movie Cinderella Man. I will get emotional 4 or 5 different times in that movie, every single time, because of the pain that he went through to become who he is. And it's not the championship that I loved, it was the pain. It was the pain. It was seeing everything lost. It was seeing him argue with his wife. It was seeing his wife actually farm out their children because he couldn't even afford to keep the electricity on, and how he said, "You never take my kids from me." And the pain that he felt is beautiful to me. It's a beautiful thing. Or Gladiator, how I would never want the ruler of Rome to go, Commodus, to go do something so terrible and vile, raping, murdering his wife, his child, and hurting him because his father selected Gladiator to be the ruler of Rome. But obviously you watch the story of what takes place. Never want to go through this in a million years. But that pain of freeing Rome by beating him in the final battle in which he was stabbed ahead of time. It's just, the story is a beautiful story, flushed with pain, flushed with anguish, flushed with hurt inside. But I think about Titanic. This is a love story. It's not as epic as Gladiator, but I think about Titanic, and you're watching a 3-hour movie knowing that they're gonna sink. You know what's gonna happen. But there's something fascinating that I have with the movie. And even though I know the love story is not real, and in case I spoiled that for you, I apologize. But that story between Leonardo DiCaprio and Rose was a beautiful story. And the fact that at the end of the movie, there's these all kinds of debates about whether he needed to die or whether he could have just stayed on that wooden plank with her at the end. And it's a great debate when you watch this take place. But forget all of that stuff for a second. Pretend and just feel that story about how he chose to have her live, even though he went down into the ocean. And you wish that they could both be saved and live a life of happily ever after. But there's something beautiful in the fact that he fought for her, just like she fought for him to save him, and then he fought back for her. and they did not live happily ever after. It had a terrible ending, but the terrible ending was beautiful in and of itself, just like an actual rose. The rose part is beautiful. The thorns are terrible, but it's beautiful how you go through this process of getting to a rose, and how you have to have your fingers actually get stabbed if you touch it the wrong way. But the rose is a beautiful part. I just love these stories. Or the movie Tombstone. Oh my gosh, the best movie ever. Recently in my list, Tombstone overtook Gladiator, but I think about that story of not having any friends, and Doc Holliday in the end fought for his friend, and he did it while he had tuberculosis, coughing up blood, being sick, dying really a terrible death. And how he fought for his friend, and he was there to face Johnny Ringo. He was there to face the Cowboys for him. And it's a love story. It's a love story. It's a love story about friendship. It's not just a love story between Wyatt Earp and him falling in love, although that is a beautiful story when she says room service. That's a beautiful story, but it's the story of friendship between two men, and how one man would be there for another man. Even though he was dying on his deathbed, he would still be there because he had a friend and he valued his friendship. And I think that friendship is a beautiful thing. And so as we go through these different stories, and I think about all these beautiful stories, I would wrap up with the greatest of all time, which is Jesus Christ. You know, it's easy to celebrate Christmas. Christmas is amazing because Christ is born, and birth is a beautiful thing. How could you be upset during a birth? But think about what a woman has to go through to give birth. In Jesus's case, think about if you're Joseph, the father, and you've never been with Mary, and you find out Mary's pregnant, and then you have a dream, and an angel tells you, don't worry, this is the Son of Man. The Holy Spirit brought this baby, and your wife is whole and she's pure, but she has this baby, and it's going to be the Son of Man, and you're going to name the baby Jesus. It's easy to celebrate Christmas. It's easy to celebrate Easter. We wear these pastel colors and these beautiful soft colors, and we put flowers everywhere because the resurrection, and that resurrection gives us eternity, and God conquering death is a beautiful thing. But we like to talk about Christmas, and we like to have Easter, and hunt Easter eggs, and we do all these commercialized things, but we don't talk about what Christ suffered on the cross. And the cross is more important than anything. What happened on the cross is more important than Christmas. What happened on the cross is more important than Easter. But we like to talk about the birth. We like to talk about the resurrection. And those are beautiful things. They're beautiful things. But it's what happened on the cross that is most beautiful, in my opinion. It's the biggest event that has ever happened, is that Christ was crucified and then was risen 3 days later. But that crucifixion and the willingness to be crucified, I believe, is the most beautiful thing that's ever taken place on planet Earth. It was not a birth. The most beautiful thing that was ever taken place was God willingly, Jesus willingly, for the Father and for the will of the Father, which we became the recipient and the beneficiaries of that action. But it wasn't just for us, it was for the will of the Father, which ended up being for us, because God so loved the world that he gave his only son. In John 3:16, the most referenced Bible verse of all time. But don't forget what happened on that cross. Don't forget the lashings and the whippings and the spitting and the crown of thorns, and what they did to his body, and mutilated his body, and just treated him like trash. The Son of Man was treated like trash, and he did it willingly, and he knew what was going to happen at the garden. He prayed so hard that he bled. He understood what he had to go through, and he understood that it was for the will of the Father. And I share this because I'm not going to go up to a child on Easter and say, yeah, you're excited about Easter, but do you know what happened 3 days ago when Christ died on the cross? No, there's a time and a place to understand. We have to become spiritually mature to understand the beauties of the world. We have to become emotionally intelligent to understand the beauties of the pain, that there's valleys and that there's the top, and we all want to touch the top of the mountain, but we don't want to go through the valleys. And I'm human like everybody else, and I go through this process. And what should you take away from content like this? It's to start falling in love more with the pain so that you could appreciate the love with your wife. To start falling in love with the process of how difficult it is to be a great parent. It is so difficult to be a great husband or wife. It is so difficult to be a great parent. It's so difficult to be a Christian. It's so difficult to fight for what's great about the United States of America rather than just hone in on the difficult things. That we had a civil war where 600,000 people died to protect the unification of our country when it was about to be torn apart, the greatest experiment in human history as a people was the United States of America and how we almost divided. You think about 9/11, 3,000 people passed away. You think about the Civil War, 600,000 people passed away to keep us unified. And although I would never want to go through a civil war, I think it's beautiful that we had to hurt each other in order to stay together. And so there's a lot of pleasure that's derived from pain, but we've got to go through the pain in order to get there. And whatever you're going through right now, if you're going through anxiety or depression, or if you have a marital issue, or if you're frustrated, or if you're hurting physically, or you're disabled physically, mentally, or if you're spiritually divided or torn, or you feel like you're alone or you're away from God, I want you to lock in and I want you to fall in love with that process, because remember, if things are not good right now, everything turns out good in the end. And if things aren't good for you, then it's not the end. I hope that you take care. God bless. And I hope that you choose to be a leader for life.